Hello, my friends. I just want to share some thoughts today. America. Whenever you look at America, for instance, what is America? What are the people in America? And I should know, I live here. I've lived here all of my life. What exactly could I compare America to? And it would be this. America is like that big movie star, actor, actress that just once got every role they ever tried out for. They made millions and millions of dollars of money. They always got the best looking people around their arms, carrying them around with them everywhere they go. People flock to them and people want to be them, and that's like America. And how she was at one point. She was just like that movie star, and the people in her just like that. All of us combined lived that kind of a life where the whole world wanted to be here, wanted to be a part of us. But what America has become whenever she fell away completely into the apostasy, which I'll speak of a little bit here. This is more just so you can see the picture of why all of this is happening. Suddenly, that actor, it happens much more so in famous actresses, where they're getting older, and all of a sudden the roles are going to the younger starlets, and they try to put more makeup on and change their body and everything else, but it's just not the same thing. And then suddenly you get some accusations that come out and some scandals. And before you know it, that once beautiful starlet that everybody wanted to be a part of suddenly has become toxic. And everybody all around her looks at her. When she shows up, everybody leaves. She's like a scorn. Nobody wants to be affiliated anymore with her. All of that beauty that she once held, completely gone. But the problem is that she's not self-aware of this. You know, there are some, speaking of actors and actresses, that have aged gracefully and just kind of went off into the sunset, accepted role-appropriate things for their new age and their new look and all of that. And there are some that have done it, but a lot won't. And they'll spiral down, usually into drugs and depression and everything else, before ultimately you know what that looks like in the end. But the thing about America is the people don't realize what she's become, how far she's fallen. And that's like spoken of by Jesus toward the 7 churches. You don't know how far that you've fallen. Everybody else around you can see it, but you can't see it because you're still thinking like you're living in the days that it was rather than what the days are now. And because you can't see the days now, you can't ponder why God has allowed it to be such as this. If there was a true believing church that believed in Jesus with all their heart and worked for him, and we did things the right way, or even we had the majority of the culture to where we could keep the world at bay, that was what old America was, the last safe haven for the gospel. But as soon as she started turning away from that, she sealed her own fate. When she went into apostasy, when she went chasing after other gods, that's the reason why everything you see happening today is. But she can't see it, because the only thing that she can do is look at her brother sitting over there with a speck in his eye, and look at her sister sitting over in the corner with a speck in her eye, and speak about those specks and what they're doing wrong, and spread gossip about them too, and everybody else around them that was part of their family. They just, spread the gossip about them. And the whole time she doesn't realize the gigantic plank that sits in her own eye. You want to look at America. Go back 2010. Let's go 14 years ago, something very simple. Take it back further than that. You can go back all the way to 1999. But things were different. There was a time period where it was at the end of that period of blessing before things really started to turn quickly, spiraling into what we're seeing happening today. And the apostate church sees all of these things happening. And they look at somebody else, well, we need to do something about this, or that's the problem right there. Because she's just like the starlet that can't see that everyone is looking to her as though she is a disease, a parasite, because of how she has let herself go. She's always quick to blame somebody else for her problems, but everything that happens in her country, if she wanted a fair election, she would have been given a fair election by God. But she didn't want the truth, so there's doubt. If she wanted good race relations, she would have given glory to Christ. And Christ would have made sure that all of the people who dwelled in that land would have been on equal terms. But she didn't want that because she has loved the lie. And she has been led astray. And she has been cast aside. She's been used by Satan like a prostitute over and over and over again. And yet she still looks at herself as the Hollywood glamorous starlet that's within her own mind because of the strong delusion that has overcome her to where she cannot see this. I'm listening to videos and I'm listening to people speak about, Israel, and I'm going to show you exactly how this matches up and aligns. You go to the news, if you look at different, every news site out there, you have to kind of feed through it to see what potentially could be true and what isn't, because there's no more news anymore. News is just punditry mixed with some facts and some lies. That's essentially news, and there's some facts more places than other places, but they're all propaganda. Everything that you see is propaganda. You can go from the conservative sites to the liberal sites. It's all spoon-fed propaganda. And the church, the harlot church, will be the first ones to say, we don't trust anything the government says. We don't trust CNN. We don't even trust Fox News anymore. Yet as soon as they show, Israel says Iran launched more than 300 drones and missiles and 99% of them are intercepted, they believe that. They believe it. Or they go even further than that and they say, well, they shot down all of those drones. Absolutely nothing happened to them because God made sure to protect his people, Israel. They'll go even to that extent. And I can tell you why they go to that extent. And they even mention it. Well, they use the Iron Dome. God's given them all this protection. They've used America and they used the other nations surrounding them, Jordan, to intercept these missiles. God is protecting them by works of human hands, human things, technology, other missiles. And they're saying the strike was to show how weak and pathetic Iran is and how God's going to just smite them now because they're so weak and pathetic, and God is behind Israel. Look, God was with them. He stopped all those missiles from hitting them. And they believe that. In spite, there are plenty of pictures, footage you can see out there where there were drones launched 5 hours ahead of time that Iran told America and Israel and the Allies, hey, we're sending all of these out to you 72 hours ahead of time. So they could all get in position like it's a big show, like it's a movie plot, and shoot all of these missiles down. And Iran pushed back enough that they say, stop now. Israel, stop now, America. And you have these people that are still calling Iran the enemies of everything, which I'm not taking a side in any of it. But if you're going to do a tit-for-tat, worldly spite between nations, Iran has been in the right. They gave 72 hours warning of what they were going to launch. They told them essentially where it was going to come from. They told them roughly what it was going to be. And they put in just a few decent caliber missiles that would for sure strike a target that wasn't going to kill anybody. It wasn't going to really destroy anything. It was just to send a message that if you keep up with us, you're not going to get these 300 drones and a couple of missile strikes. You're going to get the whole package, and you're not going to be able to take them down. And they're saying, well, the strike was a complete failure on Iran's part. Iran hit Israel bases with cruise missiles, meaning that they could have launched 1,000 of them at once, because they have tens of thousands of these missiles, and leveled Israel if they were to do so, but they didn't. But the whole story is because they believe in a lie that Israel is God's chosen people, the Jews. They believe God is intervening for them by works of technology. How would you like it if, you go back 2,000 years ago and Jesus pulled out a smartphone and was looking up on Google some cures to blindness, and he went and gathered all the things that the Google search told him to get and put it on the person's eye and said, well, you're healed now. That's like how they look at God's works today because of the technology that we have. They say that God's working through these things, and God absolutely does work through things of men. But that isn't saying that God is doing any of the defending. As a matter of fact, God has done nothing. He has let it happen as it's happening. And Iran proved that they could indeed strike Israel even with 72 hours notice and sending up a bunch of nickel and dime drones and a couple of cruise missiles. They still got some to hit, if that doesn't tell you something. And they're putting this off as a gigantic victory for Israel because God's behind them and he's doing the works for them. That's what the delusion has led to. And they're all sitting saying a rapture is imminent. God is going to destroy Iran completely. Damascus is going to get leveled. He's going to stand behind his people Israel. When the gospel says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded, flee to the mountains, because you know that its desolation is near. They're looking at everything in the wrong light because they're following the wrong God. And in their apostasy, like the Hollywood starlet, they don't even realize it. They don't recognize it because of the strong delusion that is within their minds of who Jesus Christ actually is. They don't know him. They've never known him. And their traditions, just like 2,000 years ago, have led them to call what is holy evil and what is evil good. They are standing today yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him." The whole time believing that they're the ones like Simon carrying the cross with Jesus. Everything is backwards. And they will believe what they want to believe of all of these news stories. And they will pick what they want and they will accept it without any proof to be true because they're not putting their hope in factual information or what actually happened. They're looking at God as though he's the one intervening, when God has left this nation, America. God has left that nation, Israel. The time of destruction has come. To each we all go out into the wilderness. And they still believe that God is going to come back and perform all of these miraculous works. And they believe that because Satan is going to be the one performing those works and they're going to fall right into it. Now imagine if Iran does launch 1,000 missiles up in the air and suddenly fire comes down from the heaven and destroys all of the missiles. Then what? For we know that the Antichrist can call down fire even from heaven. And who's he saving? Israel, who is the synagogue of Satan. So who would that make that God that does that? And this is what you can't get past any of them, because they believe the works of Satan over the word of Jesus Christ. They don't know what the axe being at the root of the tree actually meant. They don't know that that root is inside of everyone who is a Christian, and only those who are Christian. Because apart from the vine, one cannot produce a fruit. So if the axe was already at the roots of the tree 2,000 years ago when John spoke it, and Jesus withered it and said, may you never produce a fruit again, what does Jesus come back in the end to harvest? Roots? No, fruits. And the Jewish way was a root that changed into a vine that produces fruits of God. But if you go back to just that root and subtract the vine, you have a dead, withered tree that cannot produce a fruit. And they're looking at that dead, withered tree because it calls itself Israel and because they call themselves Jews, and believing that is of God over what their Lord Jesus, who raised them from the time they were a baby, not to fall into this. They have done against him exactly the same thing that the Jews did 2,000 years ago who were biblical Jews. And none of them can see it because they're just like the starlet. This country is going down. Israel is going down. And there's going to be a series of events happen which rise up the Antichrist. And the only thing we can do collectively, those of us who understand this, is pray that we're counted worthy to escape it. Because nobody of God will want to see what happens on this earth whenever he actually comes and gets into power. God bless.